people and the life experience.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record. Okay, how is everybody? Wanted to talk with you today about Brian Thompson's killer, Luigi Mangione. He's waived extradition. Apparently, we saw his lawyer, Thomas Dickey, talk about, we're not waiving extradition. No way are we waiving extradition. No way. You said we were going to waive extradition. No, that's wrong. We're never going to. It sounded like he was never going to waive it. But he waived it, and he's in New York today. So we're going to look at that first. We're also going to talk about a UnitedHealthcare scandal that no one's talking about. We're going to look at the Senate hearing that explored that scandal. Does it have something to do with CEO Brian Thompson, UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson's murder? Does it? Also going to look at your comments. Few people telling me I'm absolutely wrong. Luigi Mangione is a hero. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? The healthcare, yeah, that's what my boyfriend says. What's wrong with me? Healthcare industry kills way more people. They're killing people left and right and getting away with it. This is like Dexter. This is the elusive moral order. What's wrong with me? I stand firm that there is no such thing as in real life. We can fantasize, could you go back in time and kill Hitler? Something like that. But really, there are executions, certainly. But we're talking about murder outside the law, and I don't think so. That's why it's illegal. Let's take a look at Luigi Mangione in New York City, filmed like he's a movie star in his own helicopter and his own private security. This is the kind of stuff they talk about when they talk about not wanting to film these kind of killers, to inspire other killers. Did the press do the public harm by filming this and broadcasting it? That's a topic for debate. Would it be better if these people were never named and known and filmed in this way?
It's hard to believe it's only been a little bit more than a week, but here we are. He had his preliminary hearing this morning, as well as that extradition hearing. We know how that ended, given the fact that Mangione has now landed in New York, that extradition already underway, and it sounds as if he's being helicoptered in to Manhattan in order to have that process play out there. But really very little that I could tell you in terms of how Mangione behaved, other than we saw him in his animated self communicating with his attorney and speaking at times to the judge, more or less just acknowledging that he was understanding everything that was happening and that he agreed to the waiver of that extradition. We heard a little bit from the attorney, the defense attorney, Tom Dickey, about why he made that change. Earlier, just last week, he was contesting that extradition. Now, all of a sudden, his client was waiving that extradition.
Right, because now they got to set up his New York City lawyers. Who's going to represent him? We know that Keith Raniere's former lawyer is busy with P. Diddy. That's not, can't represent him. Who's going to represent Mangione? Is it going to be someone that I've seen? This is, of course, federal charges now. This is something that I was talking about last time. Where are the federal charges? Why isn't this? Why wasn't this a federal case? Seems like it appears to have become a federal case, and the track record of New York City is they win 90% of their cases. So good luck, Luigi Mangione, for winning this one. He'd be better to try to make a deal. But we'll see. We'll see.
Extradition. And the reason why is because he wanted to make sure that his legal team was set up in Manhattan, knowing that everything that was going to unfold in the district attorney's office, Alvin Bragg, and now we see these federal charges being laid upon him. So Tom Dickey said that it was in his best interest of the client. Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, Alex, I just want to point out what we're seeing right now. Of course, the suspect, Luigi Mangione, right in the center of your screen, and we can see just the absolute heavy police presence around him. This slow shuffle of a walk because of the restraints here, and, you know, fairly stoic appearance so far. Alex, I know that's very much in line with what you saw this morning. There was a change in behavior, you reported. Is that correct, Alex, from previous days where he was shouting, where he was very animated, to the version of the suspect that we're seeing today? You know, the extradition wave, this is moving forward. No other major decisions likely today. But we saw a different demeanor today. Can you speak to that a little bit, Alex?
Yeah, I was here outside this courthouse both Monday last week, which was the day he was arrested, and Tuesday last week when they had another sort of extradition hearing, the first one that took place. And it was on that Tuesday where we saw the very animated and angry Luigi Mangione exiting that police car and being shuffled inside. That's where we have that footage where you see him turn and face towards the cameras and yell about the injustices perceived that were happening to him and the insult to Americans in his own opinion. Very different today when we were showing Luigi Mangione being brought into the courthouse. But the court of law made a big difference today. They made a change, which was allowing only one single pool photographer to be out there to capture that moment. And perhaps that was the reason why we didn't see Mangione be as animated as he was exiting that cop car and being allowed into that.
Oh, there you have it. There you have it. Subdued, strangely looking very different than the crazy yelling guy we saw right beforehand in Pennsylvania, in Altoona, Pennsylvania. What happened to that guy? Isn't it strange? Does anyone else find this strange? Because I think that they're going for some kind of insanity plea. That's what I think they're going to do. Some kind of feel sorry for me, stress, I cracked. But we have your comments from last time. Let's just get right into them, shall we? Then we're going to talk about UnitedHealthcare scandal and the scandal that nobody's talking about in connection with this. Is it connected? Is it not connected? Comments first.
We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's going to read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
First one. Greg Shell, we were talking about the reward money, $60,000 total, $50,000 from the FBI, $10,000 from NYPD, and how difficult it is for the McDonald's tipster to collect on that. You have to be nominated. It has to be approved. We don't know if they're ever going to see that money. They should. Greg Shell, 8570, says, I told my son that they would screw the guy that called in this tip. I'm not wrong. Wonder why people are disillusioned. They need to pay the tipster. CJ SP4 says, how sad it is that we have become desensitized to Erder. I can't believe I'm hearing people say things like his intentions were good. I think you hit the nail on the head about his mom. She probably did know he was capable of it and could handle it when those feelings came true. She probably needed to be in denial to survive the reality of what he did. I know that as parents, we feel guilty that we failed them too somehow. Sad for everyone involved. Interestingly, first story came out that the mom told the FBI, Luigi Mangione's mom, that's who we're talking about, told the FBI the day before that she thought it might be her son. She recognized it seems like her son, but she couldn't tell. But then another story came out quite different. Luigi Mangione's mother told FBI she could see him shooting UnitedHealthcare CEO. 2 days before her son was apprehended, Luigi Mangione's mother told investigators she could see him shooting UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, New York police said on Tuesday. The bombshell disclosures came as Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg announced an indictment against Mangione on first-degree murder charges predicated on the allegations that the December 4 killing of Thompson was an act of terrorism. Finally, we went over this, that to get first degree, it has to be an act of terrorism. So if you just plan an murder for months and months and months of your wife, that's only a second degree murder in New York City. Perfect place to kill your wife. You can still get life sentence, but it's going to be tried. You have to be a witness in a crime, meaning you had to be killed for that reason because you were a witness in another crime, or you had to kill a judge or a police officer. So they finally called it an act of terrorism. Finally, they had a conversation where she didn't indicate that it was her son in the photograph, but she said it might be something that she could see him doing. The information was going to be passed along to the detectives the next morning. So she had talked to the FBI about her missing son and said that could be him. Requests for comment from Mangione's lawyer, Karen Friedman Agnafello, a little bit like Mark Agnafello, who's now P. Diddy's lawyer and was Keith Raniere's lawyer, and his cousin, Nino Mangione, a Maryland politician who previously issued a statement on behalf of the suspect's family, were not immediately returned. Okay, so that'll give you an idea. Mangione, 26, was reportedly not in contact with his family or friends for 6 months before being arrested on December 9th at a McDonald's in Altoona, PA, after an eagle-eyed customer alerted staff they believed a person resembling the shooting suspect was on the premises. Police say he was carrying a 9mm ghost gun, a suppressor, and several fake IDs. A lot of people say, like, he was set up. Isn't it amazing that he was carrying all this stuff? Some people are just dumb. I think he thought he was the smartest person in the room, wasn't going to be caught. The Ivy League educated scion of a prominent Maryland family member is suspected of approaching Thompson. We all know what he was convicted or charged with doing. approaching Thompson, CEO of one of America's largest health insurers, on the street in Midtown Manhattan early on December 4th and opening fire. Thompson was hit in the back and leg. And it died shortly thereafter in a local hospital. It's just so sad that our country is raising money. I don't think Mangione's ever going to see any of it, but they're raising money for his, i.e., fraudulently stealing lots of money in his name. That's what I think is going on. But they say they're raising it in his name. I don't know. Hopefully it will get to a lawyer, not be stolen. Not that I hope that he gets money for his. I wish nobody would send their money to a accused killer, but people seem to want to. What are you going to do? This is the state of the world. It's taught me so much about why there's so little support for victims in this country. How far our moral compass, especially with young people. He has the most support among young people, apparently. How far our moral compass has turned in this country. So, going to talk about another scandal. So, about UnitedHealthcare. So, going back to 2022, they wanted to expand. Hold on one second. There was 2023, there was a probe into them. They wanted to, and their shares, there's a DOJ probe into them. Their shares fell. And in 2004, they got hacked. And 1/3 of the country, private information was leaked by, it was 2 hacking groups that did it. They held this hacked information for ransom. UnitedHealthcare paid the ransom to the tune of, is it $22 million, Maestro? Do I have that right? Am I remembering that correctly? Is it 32 or 22? I thought it was 22 million. I think he'll let me know. And they still didn't get it back because there were 2 computer groups that did it. Does this have anything to do with why Brian Thompson? I think Mangione was just a psychopath who wanted to kill, but he was also a computer nerd. Here he is at University of Pennsylvania. That was his specialty, computers. Again, he had a student club that met together. Was he part of this hacking somehow? I mean, that's a theory. And so one half of the hacking group took the money and split. And it was never returned. So here's our Senate looking into this. And it's rather long. We're going to get through what we're going to get through. This may be a little bit of a longer episode, but very fascinating Senate hearing looking into this scandal with Andrew Whitty, who's a British CEO who has spoken out about Thompson's murder and says that they paid $22 million in ransom to a group called Black Cat. But that was just apparently one half of it. So one half of the hackers stole the other half of the hackers' money. No honor among thieves. So could he be involved in this? That's the question.
Personnel management. The FBI called that a treasure trove of counterintelligence information.
He did have fake IDs and a passport. That's one of the most damning pieces of evidence against him, Sergeant, is the ID he used that the shooter used to get in the hostel was found on Luigi Mangione. It's almost impossible to get around why he would have that fake ID. Not only is he caught on camera, I'm sure he's going to have the same experts that the Innocence Project uses when people are caught on camera to say that this is a different guy. You have the wrong guy. It's not Luigi Mangione. See, there's a height difference. There's from the guy in the pictures to this guy. Mark my words. If they go that route, if they go you got the wrong guy route. But the hardest thing for them to get around is not only the fingerprint that they have on the water bottle, but and there's talks of DNA being taken. Haven't heard much about that, but they do have his fingerprint on the water bottle found by the scene. You're going to say they got it wrong. The first reports were that fingerprint was smudged. Defense may be able to take advantage of that smudge somehow. But how are they going to get around the fake ID? Going to be really hard.
For foreign intelligence sources. United Health Group has not revealed how many patients' private medical records were stolen, how many providers went without reimbursement, and how many seniors were unable to pick up their prescriptions.
Susan Hicks. Yeah, my point is that there is basically a junk science going around. Susan Hicks says, Roberta, the FBI has the equipment to determine the height. Yeah, this is just how the Innocence Project is getting. We just had someone in New York get off this way. So when people are caught on camera, they get these experts to say, oh, there's a height difference. It's not them. Even there's a case in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where a guy was let off and his own father ID'd him. And then they found the bandana and the gun that was used in the crime in his home. So it's just a junk science they use. I'm not putting my faith in it. I have no faith in it. I'm sure it's him. I'm just saying they're going to go that junk science route. Susan, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. They're going down the junk science route.
As a result of the hack.
My prediction from watching the Innocence Project get out, guiltier people, more guilty people every year that they go on.
The failures of CEOs like Mr. Whitty, who months in can't figure out how many people have had their data stolen, validates the FBI warning. In the wake of this hack, United essentially disconnected Change from the rest of the healthcare system. It took weeks for Change to get back online, leaving healthcare providers all across the country, certainly in my home state of Oregon, in a state of financial bedlam. Doctors and hospitals went weeks delivering services, but without getting paid. Insurance companies couldn't reimburse providers. Even today, key function.
So this is a key element of this. So there's lots of pharmacies and small practices that could not pay their providers or not pay for supplies or had to go sell their business. And many times it was sold to UnitedHealthcare because UnitedHealthcare would not pay on their claims because they had paid out to these hackers. I don't know. These claims went unpaid. So this is an element of the scandal here.
Supporting plans and providers, including sending receipts for services that have been paid, and the ability to reimburse patients for their out-of-pocket costs are not back up and running. The small providers, particularly mental health providers, have been left holding the bag, stuffing envelopes with paper claims and unable to get straight answers on how long this outage is going to last. And patients are bearing the brunt of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting case. I should really do an episode. I've been meaning to do an episode for years on that Ann Arbor case. I asked the DA to come on. At first he said yes, and then he did a little research on me. Found out I would know what I was talking about. I was like, I just want to talk about the guy that you released, you know? And so, and then they called back and canceled. But I've been really meaning to do it. Their argument was that the father had a bad relationship with the son, so he couldn't he falsely ID'd his own son. But he also did the crime with another person who was also convicted. So what happened to that guy? It's just wild. The whole thing is wild. What this Luigi Mangione fandom has made me realize is it really doesn't matter what they did. Innocence is just a word. They don't mean it. They just mean they don't care what they did. It doesn't matter. They just see the convicted as the little guy, the same way that privileged Luigi Mangione is seen as the little guy up against the big healthcare, and they support him. And it's not just down political lines. It's left and right people both supporting him. So just the same way that innocence fraud is done on both sides of the political fence.
Prescription.
You know, any politician finds it politically useful to release someone, they will. And is anybody, we got to can we talk about this pardon? Let me just vent for 5 seconds about this pardon thing. It is outrageous how many pardons that Biden has done, past presidents have done. We have to can we put a limit on these pardons? Say, can we cap them off? He's at over 8,000 pardons. Can we, from this last term and this term? So, it's 1,500 in one day. Can we just put a cap, say on 1,000, 500 maybe, on how many pardons a president can have? This is getting out of control. I loathe them every time on both sides. Whoever does it, I just loathe them.
Went unfilled. Patients were stuck at the hospital longer than needed. And Americans are still in the dark about how much of their sensitive information was stolen. The credit monitoring service Change is now offering is cold comfort to all of these frustrated patients across the land. The Change healthcare hack is considered by many to be the biggest cybersecurity disruption to healthcare in American history. It is, in my view, Exhibit A that the country needs tough cybersecurity standards, and they're needed to protect critical infrastructure and patients across the country. The Health and Human Services Department doesn't require healthcare providers, payers, or healthcare clearinghouses like Change to meet minimum cybersecurity standards, unlike industries regulated by other federal agencies.
Okay, so this is talking about the regulation of UnitedHealthcare, but while they're doing this, I just want to show you, talking about pardon. Someone did a tweet that I thought was interesting. And there was a community note under that Carter did because he put in some kind of act put a blanket pardon for draft dodgers that covered 209,000 offenders. So officially Carter would be the one with the most pardons, but here's Biden's pardons. This is 8,000 here. I think is he right at or just under 8,000? Let me see if I can put the link to this in the comments for you guys to look at. But he did the Cash for Kids judge pardon that I called the worst pardon since the FALN terrorists that both Obama and Clinton pardoned, and the Weather Underground terrorists. That was a horrible thing. So I've done a lot of episodes or a few episodes on the troubled teen industry, and this judge was taking money to put kids in these troubled teen places that are, many of them have been shut down. Kids of New Jersey was one. There's a great little known episode I did called The Troubled Teen Who Wasn't, about Lulu Corder, talking to that lawyer. It's a really interesting episode if you want to listen to it. That was terrible pardons. Anyway, enough about pardons. I'm just up in arms. That'll just give you an idea of how many.
Meeting a baseline of essential cybersecurity standards is a must, but it is meaningless without strong enforcement. Health and Human Services has not conducted a proactive cybersecurity audit in 7 years. As it stands, if a company doesn't comply with the relatively meager cybersecurity regulations, the fines amount to nothing more than a slap on the wrist. In my view, federal agencies need to fast-track new cybersecurity rules for Americans' private medical records, and the Congress needs to watchdog this every day to make sure that what is getting done is the essentials of protecting patient data.
So everything is up still on the web. People's passports, IDs, private information, records, they're still up somewhere. About 1/3 of America's data is floating somewhere on the dark web. Isn't that a comforting thought?
Finally, the Change hack is a dire warning about the consequences of too big to fail megacorporations gobbling up larger and larger shares of the healthcare system. It is long past time to do a comprehensive scrub of UnitedHealthcare's anti-competitive practices, which likely prolonged the fallout from the hack. For example, Change Healthcare's exclusive contracts prevented more than 1/3 of providers from switching clearinghouses, even though Change's systems were down for weeks. Accountability for Change Healthcare's failure starts at the top. Before this hearing, I asked the company which members of its board have cybersecurity expertise. UHG pointed to the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, who signed some technology-related legislation years ago when he was governor of Massachusetts. He certainly seems to be an expert on basketball, but UHG needs an actual cybersecurity expert on its board. Mr. Witte owes Americans an explanation for how a company of UHG's size and importance failed to have multi-factor authentication on a server providing open-door access to protected health information, why its recovery plans were so woefully inadequate, and how long it's going to take to finally secure all of its systems. I hope that today's hearing can mark the beginning of a bipartisan effort here in the Finance Committee. That's what we've done on PBMs and a variety of other important issues. I encourage all the members of the committee on both sides of the aisle to focus on the subject in hand. That is because this is so important, it's so vital, and there's much to discuss. Senator Crapo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you holding this hearing today. And thank you, Mr. Witte, for being here with us. On February 21, 2024, UnitedHealth Group learned that its subsidiary, Change Healthcare, was the victim of a cyber attack launched by a suspected nation-state associated cybersecurity threat actor. In response, Change, the nation's largest healthcare clearinghouse, which processes $1.5 trillion in medical claims annually, disconnected all of its systems to prevent the hackers from obtaining additional data. The fallout from this unprecedented attack has affected the entire healthcare sector. By crippling Change's functionality, the hackers left providers unable to verify patients' insurance coverage, submit claims and receive payments, exchange clinical records, generate cost estimates and bills, or process prior authorization requests. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, many providers had to rely on reserves to cover the resulting revenue losses. An American Hospital Association survey found that more than 90% of hospitals were financially impacted by the cyber attack, with more than 70% reporting that the outage had directly affected their ability to care for patients. More than 2 weeks after the cyber attack was announced, the Department of Health and Human Services released a public statement and guidance related to the incident. On March 9th, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services made accelerated and advanced payments available to impacted Medicare providers. The administration's delay exacerbated an already uncertain landscape, leaving providers and patients with reasonable concerns about access to essential medical services and life-saving drugs. While the February hack on Change was by far the most disruptive cyber attack on the healthcare industry to date, it was certainly not the first. According to a report by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the healthcare sector experienced more ransomware attacks than any other critical infrastructure sector in 2023. In addition to the processing and revenue issues experienced by providers, patients, private identification and healthcare information was obtained by malicious actors during the breach. Unfortunately, personal healthcare data has become increasingly attractive to cyber criminals who seek to use that information for blackmail or identity theft. For patients, the emotional and financial effects of leaked private information can have a devastating impact for years. Although many of Change's functions have now resumed, trust in the security of its platforms needs to be rebuilt. We owe it to American patients and to our frontline healthcare providers, from health systems to clinicians and community pharmacies, to ensure that this does not and cannot happen again. Today's hearing offers a valuable opportunity to learn from United's experience so we can better protect against and quickly react to future cyber attacks. Gaining a deeper understanding of how the hackers infiltrated Change will help identify and address gaps in our existing cybersecurity infrastructure. Evaluating steps taken by United in response to the attack, from disconnecting its platforms to notifying law enforcement, will offer lessons on how to build a more resilient and collaborative healthcare system moving forward. We must also assess the response of the federal government, which plays a critical role in those efforts. HHS has a responsibility to serve as a central hub for coordination, convening insights from other branches of government and the private sector to deploy timely information about active threats, as well as best practices to deter intrusions and resources should an attack occur. Thank you, Mr. Whitty, again for being here to discuss building a more secure, resilient, and responsive healthcare system. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Crapo. Andrew Whitty is the Chief Executive Officer of the United Health Group. Prior to that, he was the Executive Vice President of United Health and CEO of Optum. From 2008 to 2017, Mr. Whitty was CEO and a Director of GlaxoSmithKline. Mr. Whitty, we appreciate your being here. I believe you're going to take 5 minutes or so to share your testimony.
Right. So he said after Brian Thompson's murder that, let me see if I can get the exact quote. 1 minute. Our role is a critical role, and we make sure that care is safe, appropriate, and is delivered when people need it, and that the insurer will continue to prevent unnecessary care and advise that people refrain from discussing anything with the media. Some online. Okay. So he did and that their policies continue, and Fortune pointing out that UnitedHealthcare, okay, their policies contribute to medical bankruptcies. This is what Fortune alleges, and their lives lost due to denied care, highlighting widespread anger at systematic issues in U.S. healthcare. But this has solved zero. This is not the way that you make change in our country, is by this kind of terrorism, and this is an act of terrorism.
A lot of member interest, and you're going to get questions, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep them on this extraordinarily important topic. Mr. Whitty.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Wyden, Ranking Member Crapo, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. My name is Andrew Whitty. I serve as Chief Executive Officer of United Health Group. Our mission is to help people live healthier lives and help make the health system work better for everyone. We pursue this mission through our two distinct businesses, UnitedHealthcare, which provides a full range of benefits, and Optum, which brings together care delivery, pharmacy services, and technology and data to advance patient-centered care. Change Healthcare is now part of Optum. It enables information, claims, and payments to flow quickly and accurately between physicians, pharmacists, health plans, and governments. I appreciate the committee's interest in the recent cyber attack on Change Healthcare. As a result of this malicious cyber attack, patients and providers have experienced disruptions, and people are worried about their private health data. To all those impacted, let me be very clear. I'm deeply, deeply sorry. Our response to this attack has been grounded in three principles: to secure the systems, to ensure patient access to care and medication, and to assist providers with their financial needs. We have deployed the full resources of United Health Group in this effort. I want to assure the American public we will not rest, I will not rest, until we fix this. Cyber experts continue to investigate the incident, and while we will learn more and our understanding may change, here's what I can share today. Cyber criminals entered a Change Healthcare portal, exfiltrated data, and on February the 21st deployed ransomware. The portal they accessed was not protected by multi-factor authentication. Our response was swift and forceful. To contain infection, we immediately severed connectivity and secured the perimeter of the attack to prevent malware from spreading. It worked. There is no evidence of spread beyond Change Healthcare. Within hours of the ransomware launch, we contacted the FBI. We continue to share information with them so that these criminals can be brought to justice. As we've responded to this attack, including dealing with the demand for ransom, my overarching priority has been to do everything possible to protect people's personal health information. The decision to pay a ransom was mine. This was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. As you know, we found files in the exfiltrated data containing protected health information and personally identifiable information, which could cover a substantial proportion of people in America. So far, we have not seen evidence that materials such as doctors' charts or full medical histories were exfiltrated. It will take several months before enough information will be available to identify and notify impacted customers and individuals, partly because the files containing that data were compromised in the attack. Rather than waiting to complete this review, we're providing free credit monitoring and identity theft protections for 2 years, along with a dedicated call center staffed by clinicians to provide support services. Anyone concerned that their data may have been impacted should visit changecybersupport.com for more information. Meanwhile, we continue to make substantial progress in restoring Change.
Wow, isn't that comforting? Just go to changecybersecurity.com if you think your information like your passport or say your private health data is all up on the dark web. Just go to that and check that out. I mean, they should have dedicated help for like 24 hours dedicated to this until it's straightened out, wouldn't you think? Oh, this online help service stuff is just not, it's just like, thanks for the information. It's how often, occasionally there are like a couple, it's usually if I'm trying to think if it's ever been helpful for me. Not really. Usually you have a specific question and a person has to work it out.
Healthcare services. First, the team built a new technology environment in just a matter of weeks. Second, we prioritized our restoration effort on services most vital to ensuring access to care: pharmacy services, claims, and payments to providers. And third, while these efforts were underway, we worked quickly to provide financial assistance to providers who need it. We have advanced more than $6.5 billion in accelerated payments and no interest, no fee loans to thousands of providers. Most of these funds are for claims for non-UHC health plans, and about 34% of the loans have gone to safety net hospitals and federally qualified health centers. We will provide this assistance for as long as it takes to get providers' claims and payments flowing at pre-incident levels. And if there are providers in your states who need help, please put us in touch with them. Fighting cybercrime is an enormous task, and one that requires us all, industry, law enforcement, and policymakers, to come together. I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you, Mr. Witte. Let me begin with this. This hack could have been stopped with Cybersecurity 101. And I'm talking specifically about multi-factor authentication, MFA. When your bank app asks you to enter a code sent by text or email, that's MFA. It secures your account even if your password is learned. Yet your testimony reveals this first server that was hacked didn't have multi-factor authentication. So question one, I'd like a yes or no answer to, Mr. Witte. Prior to the hack, did you or any of your senior management know that UHG was not requiring MFA company-wide? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. Our policy is to have MFA for externally facing systems.
So if the answer is yes, then that makes my point.
We plan on doing that in the future now that we've been hacked. Thanks. No, we don't have that. What I always find so annoying, we'll send a code to your email. You have to go back and do it. We plan to have that in the future. Thank you for your question. Thank you for this random hassle of my day and having to answer these questions.
Point that on your watch, there was a cybersecurity failure. And then that's what caused the harm to patients, the healthcare sector, and your investors. I don't believe there are any excuses for that. So my second question is, will you commit within 6 months at the latest to require multi-factor authentication company-wide and meet the tough MFA standards that are required of federal agencies? Again, a yes or no answer.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm happy to commit to that. In fact, I can confirm to you that as of today, across the whole of UHG, all of our external facing systems have got multi-factor authentication enabled.
We will take that as a yes. It shouldn't have taken the worst cyber attack ever in the healthcare sector for an agreement to do this bare minimum. Now, second, with respect to national security, people claiming to be involved with this hack have asserted publicly that they stole data on U.S. government employees, including active duty U.S. military service members. My colleagues remember the 2015 hack of OPM government personnel data, which obviously posed very serious counterintelligence concerns. And I am very concerned, as I said in my opening statement, about the national security implications of this hack as well. Are you in a position this morning to say whether the hackers stole data pertaining to U.S. government employees?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. Like you, I'm extremely concerned about any patient's information, but particularly in the context you just described. So far, through the process of working through the data, what we've been able to identify is indeed a substantial portion of people across the country's data could be implicated here, We do believe there will be members of the armed forces and the veterans associated.
When can you give us in writing the number of military personnel affected and your best assessment of who they are? Can I have that quickly?
I give you my absolute commitment. That is
a week?
Top priority. It will take longer than a week, but as fast as we possibly can, we will get that.
This is a national security priority, Mr. Whitty. 2 weeks, I expect it.
We will absolutely prioritize that, sir.
All right. Let's talk about why things are taking so long, and particularly how hard providers are being hit, because they're paying the price for the failures that have been made on your watch. How much longer will a provider who sent in a claim for services delivered in February have to wait in order to be paid?
So we know that Luigi Mangione's family had old age homes, owned those kind of facilities. Were they hit by this kind of non-payment from UnitedHealthcare? Just a question. Was this threatening his livelihood? We know that Mangione's grandmother had a clause in her will. He was supposed to get worth $30 million, and he was an heir to it, that if one of her heirs committed a heinous felony, that they were not to be excluded from the will. So did Luigi Mangione's grandmother know that Mangione was a psychopath? What did the family know? That's the really more interesting question in this. So, and what were they affected? You know, I'm hesitant to attach as kind of motivation, because I really think the motivation was just to do it, to give him a feeling of power. I think he thought this was the perfect crime and he could get away with it. And he did for a couple days, but he made big errors, as all murderers do in this day and age. We're just way too filmed a society to shoot someone down in broad daylight and get away with it, of someone of this prominence, and get away with it for too long. But I think he just fantasized about doing it and did it. I think the cause is really a red herring in this case. I think he knew that by attaching his murder to a cause, he would get this kind of support. The way that psychopaths are so cunning and clever and can tap into the real emotions that they don't have, of the American public, and exploit them. Exploiting emotions is something he's probably done his whole life. There's been also reports that due to his back pain, he became an incel, and that's why he just wanted love. And I mean, this is just ridiculous. This is a gossip columnist, Perez Hilton, reporting this and calling Brian Thompson Brian Tompkins. I mean, what? I mean, they can't even get the victim's name right. No correction ever, no apology. Just goes on saying that poor hunky Luigi Mangione. We saw Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about it, that his whole staff is in love with him. I mean, this is really getting out of control. It needs to be reined back morally, that you think it's okay to joke about it. I mean, we all make fun of the women who thought Ted Bundy was so dreamy, but they were just a sideshow, a minority. This is like a good portion of society is joining in on the Mangione fandom. It's bizarre.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. Our belief at this point is that claims flow across the entire country is essentially back to normal. Certainly from a United Health Group's perspective, we are paying claims as soon as they arrive. We're aware that other companies may not be paying as quickly.
Providers are telling me it's going to take until at least June to clear the backlog. Can you do that earlier?
We can move absolutely faster than that, and in the meantime, we are providing financial support.
When can you expect to have that cleared?
We believe the system is broadly back to normal now. If there are any providers in state who you'd like to refer us to, we can make sure that they are particularly
Practically
addressed.
every provider I bump into is waiting to be paid.
Those payments from United certainly have been made. We are caught up, and we continue to advance significant interest-free loans for others.
Will you commit to waiving deadlines for timely filings and appeals for claims until everything's back in order?
Yes, sir, we have already waived those.
Will you commit to paying meaningful compensation to each provider and plan whose business operations you disrupted?
So we're happy to engage with providers to discuss that.
Please send that to me in writing, how the compensation system would work. Let me mention one other area very quickly. I've been following your various comments, and consistently, your views seem to minimize the impact of your involvement. You say that UnitedHealthcare payments processing accounts for only 6% of payments in the healthcare system. My view is that's basically hiding the ball. In 2022, the Department of Justice said the change retains records of at least 211 million individuals going back to 2012. So how many people have actually been impacted? Where did you find those files? And what medical information was stolen? I need answers to those three questions. How many have been impacted? Where did you find the files? What medical information is stolen?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. As I've said, that is very much a top priority for us to get to the bottom of. We're working our way through that. As of this point, we have not identified anything like medical records or medical histories. What we have seen is claims information.
But you don't have the logs that would show what data walked out the door, because we have been working to get that and we haven't seen it. Senator Crapo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Witte, the FBI has repeatedly warned that the healthcare sector is particularly attractive to cyber criminals. As your testimony notes, United alone experiences an attempted cyber intrusion once every 70 seconds. However, nationwide, cybersecurity preparedness and response guidelines for healthcare sectors appear to be disjointed. Without disclosing proprietary or security-related details, how do you intend to revise United's cybersecurity protocols to incorporate the lessons that you've learned from this experience?
Senator Crapo, thank you very much for the question. First and foremost, let me reiterate how seriously we take this and how diligently we are working to make this right, both technically and also to make sure we understand the patient information implications. To your question of how we're responding to this, first and foremost, let me reiterate, we have an enforced policy across the organization to have multi-factor authentication on all of our external systems, which is in place.
Well, can I interrupt for just a second? I think part of my question is, and you were about to get to that, but I want to be sure that you're responsive to this. Is it as simple as fixing the multi-factor system?
It's multi-layered, sir. So that is one element, but it is only one element of the defense. Making sure, so for example, we now have implemented, in addition to our normal corporate-wide scanning of our technology environment, we've now brought external third parties to do double or treble scanning across our systems as a further protection layer. We've also made the decision to strengthen our oversight of cybersecurity at the company by bringing to our board on a every meeting basis Mandiant, which is the leading cybersecurity advisory service in America. They have been extremely helpful in understanding this attack, and they have become a board advisor to ensure that we have the very best advice at the top of the company.
Would you agree that this type, and maybe even a stronger approach than this type, needs to become standard across our healthcare industry, everything from government to the private sector, and frankly, the entire aspect of our healthcare system?
Senator Crapo, I would agree with that. And what we saw in Change Healthcare, which was a company which just came into our group a little over a year and a half ago, was a company which was an older company, had older legacy technologies, but I think is very typical of many small to medium-sized organizations in our healthcare environment. And therefore, inevitably, There is going to be a lot of work to be done to upgrade those standards, but I do agree with your assertion.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to move on to restoration and protection of patient information. Your testimony indicates both pharmacy services and medical claims are now flowing at near normal levels. Is that accurate?
That's our belief, yes.
And while this is welcome news, the effects of the cyber attack continue, from ongoing revenue backlogs to unfolding details about exposed patient health and identity information. Which functions remain offline, and when do you expect 100% of Change's systems to be restored?
Thank you very much for the question. So all of our core systems are now up and fully functional. So that means pharmacy processing, claims, payments. The systems which are not available are really ancillary support functions, so not determinative of the main claims activity.
Mr. Whitty needs to learn how to sit on his suit, on the back of his suit, the little flaps on the back of his suit. It's getting a little weird hunchiness to his suit there. Thank you for the question. Is anybody getting tired of the thank you for the question? I am. He just comes off as a insincere and eager to just say the right things and slickly get out of there. Is anyone else getting that feeling?
Which is where the disruption has been caused. I'd also just like to emphasize that as soon as the attack took place, we encouraged providers to divert their volumes to other competitors to Change, of which there are several. And many of them continue to operate through those channels, which is another way in which normal service was resumed.
Have you heard reservations from providers about reconnecting to Change? And if so, how are you working to address those concerns?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I think that's a natural and good concern for people to have after an attack like this. You want to be reassured that the system is safe to reconnect to. That's why we disconnected so quickly in the beginning, so that we didn't infect anybody else. And the reason why it's taken longer than you might expect to recover is we've literally built this platform back from scratch so that we can reassure people that there are not elements of the old attacked environment within the new technology, the new technical environment that we've created. And we're sharing all of those details with clients and customers as they reconnect, and I'm pleased to say they are reconnecting substantially.
All right, thank you. And finally, would you share an update on your understanding of the magnitude and the type of patient information that may have been obtained by the hackers? And when do you expect to begin the process of contacting impacted individuals?
Thank you for your question. We're working.
Here, this is interesting. What type of information was leaked? I hear it's everything.
Working closely with the regulators on that last point of timing, how to and when to start communicating. We want to try and avoid piecemeal communication, and it's our top priority to get this done just as fast as possible.
Thank you.
Thank my colleague. Just on this multi-factor authentication, we know that we heard from your people that you had a policy, but you all weren't carrying it out, and that's why we had the problem. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being with us. I'm from Tennessee. We have been absolutely inundated with phone calls since this came back. People are trying to get some clarity around your statement about a substantial portion of people in America being affected by this, because right now it looks like anybody that is doing business with you. And I will tell you this, the reality that hospitals and providers are facing is wildly different from the rosy picture that you have painted. You have made a statement recently that payment processing by Change Healthcare is at approximately 86% of pre-incident levels. This morning, you said that it was back to normal. And I will tell you this, there is a backlog that many of our providers and hospitals have from 9 weeks of not being able to get in and make these claims. We have, and here's a good for instance for you, a small independent private act hospital in West Tennessee. And they have diligently submitted all of their claims, and they are burdened with a backlog of Medicare claims that is equivalent to 30 days of revenue. And they're waiting for these things to be transmitted to Medicare. And this is all because of the missteps that you all have had. Now, every day they call to get an update. Every single day they're calling. And they get the runaround every single day, repeatedly. It is like you all can't figure this out. And the absence of Medicare electronic remittance is compounding the problem, and it's requiring that manual payment processing. And of course, this goes into labor cost. You've got error rates. So when can Tennessee providers and hospitals expect you all to clear the backlog, to catch up, and be back to normal?
Senator, thank you very much for the question, and I'm very sorry to hear the experience in your state of
When?
those hospitals. We will reach out to your office to find out the names of those hospitals. We will get connected with them.
Take every hospital, every provider.
So
we have hospitals that are pulling on a line of credit. Are you going to pay that interest? Are you going to reimburse that?
We are offering interest-free loans directly ourselves and be more than willing.
No, I said, are you going to pay these interest costs? Okay, let me move on with you, because one of the surprises, and the chairman just mentioned this, is the lack of redundancies that you all had built into the system. Now, your revenues are bigger than some countries' GDP. And how in heaven's name did you not have the necessary redundancies so that you did not experience this attack and find yourself so vulnerable?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, Change Healthcare had only recently become part of UnitedHealth Group. We were in the process of upgrading and modernizing their technology. The attack itself had the effect of locking up the various backup systems which had been developed inside Change before it was acquired. That's really the root cause of why it's taken so long to bring it back. And as I emphasize that we have worked to rebuild a brand new technical environment so that we know that it is modern and it's not infected from the attack.
Well, there may be excuses, but was there not a thought process put in place on the front end as you were going through this of how you would protect yourself from vulnerabilities?
Change Healthcare came into the organization just about a year and a half ago.
I'm fully aware of that.
We were in the process of upgrading their technology when this attack happened.
All right. There again, for whatever reason, short-sighted.
Does everybody get the Change Healthcare where they were in the process of came into the UnitedHealthcare? I guess they sucked that company up, and then that was the part of the company that got hacked. They were in the process of upgrading their software. So was it just the Change people, or was it just, I mean, they're talking about a third of Americans could have had their information leaked.
And not having a plan to incorporate is let's move on. Optum, because it's widely acknowledged that Optum's temporary assistance program fails to adequately address the financial setbacks that are caused by this. Now, we've got one Tennessee provider that disclosed receiving a one-time payment of $8,000, significantly below their usual daily revenue of $20,000. And these providers have resorted to tapping into personal savings, retirement funds, seeking loans from banks. And so are you going to cover all of those costs that they have had to incur in order to keep the doors open because you did not have an appropriate backup plan?
As important as this question is, briefly, because we got a lot of members interested. Answer.
So, Senator, thank you for the question. Very happy to engage with those providers. We'll reach out
We
to
look
your
forward
office
to
together.
the engagement.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Menendez.
Mr. Witte, your company's slow progress in restoring services and advancing loans to providers caused operational disruptions with consequences for providers, pharmacies, and patients across the nation. For weeks, hospitals and providers had to deal with low loan offers and onerous terms from the company, in some cases less than 1% of their typical weekly billing, all while patients suffered. Your company is the nation's largest private health insurer and the largest physician employer in the country, earning billions in profits every quarter. It's unacceptable that it took so long to help providers during a crisis of your creating. Now I'm concerned about what's going to happen on the back end. So do you commit to not exploiting the destabilized provider markets that you created to further acquire other subsidiaries? That simple yes or no would be great.
Senator, absolutely, we will not take advantage of that, and we have not. I'd also like to reassure you, we understand that in the effort to go quickly in terms of setting up our loan program, we didn't get all of the terms and conditions right. We fixed that very early, and we've now been able to advance $6.5 billion.
So let's talk about that. UnitedHealthcare, as you have just said, claims to have distributed $6.5 billion in financial support to providers. But you're dealing with an enormous backlog of claims estimated to be easily over $14 billion, with some estimates putting the total impacted services at many multiples of that. In other words, your accelerated or advanced payments were a tiny fraction of the total amount of services affected. It's my understanding that UnitedHealthcare and its subsidiaries know to the penny what the average provider bills in an average day, week, or month is. Yet providers in my state and across the country were struggling to keep their doors open as they waited for these payments. What reasonable explanation could you have for taking so long to get these accelerated payments out the door?
Senator, thank you again for the question. Unfortunately, United does not know the flows to folks from other payers than United, which is part of the reason why our initial approach was not as effective as we'd have liked to have been. We put in place a mechanism which, for the vast majority of providers, gives them authorization on interest-free loans within hours of application, and that remains open and available for providers who need it today.
It seems to me almost incredible to believe that you do not know a company that is so long established and you don't know the flow of what a daily, weekly, monthly amount is to a certain provider. That's hard to believe.
So we understand the flow when we are the payer, but oftentimes we're not the payer, and those would be the situations. And as I'm sure you are aware, we have been making loans to underwrite the cash flow consequences for other payers, not just UnitedHealthcare.
Well, it seems to me that you wasted a lot of time trying to pull a fast one by imposing onerous loan terms on providers. Can you commit to not demanding loan repayments until the claims backlog is cleared?
So we've streamlined all of our terms and conditions, and yes, we've already told providers that there is no need to repay these interest-free loans until 45 days after they have concluded they are back to normal.
Do any of the loan terms prohibit health providers from working with any of United or Optum's competitors?
No.
Now, following the breach, you offered to do breach notifications for covered entities like hospitals and provider groups that are still grappling with severe and ongoing disruptions to daily operations. Now, this commitment is an important step in the right direction, as providers should not be bound by the burden of providing HIPAA-required breach notifications. But no prudent medical group can rely on vague promises containing no specifics with respect to timing or implementation. Providers currently face mounting concerns about their own regulatory exposure should United not fulfill these promises. Further, as more patients become aware of the possible disclosures of their sensitive information, they will turn to their providers for information and assurances, neither of which can currently be provided. So when can providers expect concrete details on breach notifications in writing from United Health Group?
Sir, this is our top priority. We want to get this done as fast as possible, and we're working with the regulators to ensure that we can get that communication as quickly as possible.
Okay, so can you give us a time frame? Is that a week? Is it a month?
I think it will be in the next several weeks.
And what sort of documentation will United Health Group require of covered entities and will agreements include information about limitation or waiver of liability?
That's something we're working through with the regulators so that we can be very clear to those providers.
I'd like you to respond to the committee when you get to that conclusion. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. Senator Grassley's next.
Welcome to the committee. Last month, I wrote to Health and Human Services Secretary Becerra regarding protecting critical infrastructure within the healthcare sector. In that letter, I highlighted the need for a strong relationship between public and private partners to ensure the safety of U.S. critical infrastructure systems. I also inquired about legacy information technology systems. Cyber attacks on our healthcare system not only have severe impact on our economy, but put lives at risk. So my first question is, what's United Health Group's relationship with HHS and other government agencies as it relates to cybersecurity of the healthcare industry? How have HHS and Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency worked with your company in the aftermath of the cybersecurity failure?
Senator Grassley, thank you for the question. We've had a close engagement, I would say daily engagement with particularly CMS within HHS. CMS have been extremely engaged and supportive through this, particularly in terms of how we've worked to support providers and to prioritize recovery of the system. And the FBI has been our prime partner in terms of law enforcement and response to the attack itself.
Does the United Health Group use legacy IT systems that need to be updated? If so, what's been done to update?
So Change Healthcare is a good example of a company that came into our organization with older technologies, a 40-year-old company with many different technology generations within it. As we always do with new companies like that, we strive to upgrade them to the standards of United Health Group, which I believe are consistently higher than the companies that we brought into the organization.
I think you touched on it, but let me ask specifically, has United Health Group taken every available action to immediately remove memory safety risk in its IT and software?
Sir, could you just repeat that, please? I couldn't hear the second part of the question.
He asked you to repeat it.
What?
Repeat it, your question.
Oh, refused to answer it.
No, he just said he couldn't understand.
Oh. Well.
So he just asked you to repeat the question.
Has United Health Group taken every available action to immediately remove memory safety risks in its IT and software?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question around memory safety risk. Okay. I can assure you.
Do you think this guy understands the question he's asking? He's like, wait, I have to ask it again? My interns just wrote this for me. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I don't know computers. I can barely, and then he's saying it louder. He's like, what? He's like, oh, I have to ask it again? Let me ask it louder. So he's shouting it. He's like, louder. That I still don't understand the substance of the question. Louder doesn't help me, but thank you for asking that again. That's a funny moment.
That since the attack.
Why don't you do this? Answer that question in writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to do so.
My understanding is that Change Healthcare touches 1 in 3 medical records in the United States. I'd like to better understand how Change Healthcare stores and manages patient data. How does Change Healthcare manage and store patient data? Where is the data stored? Is it stored by third parties? And at what point through processing, coding, and storing is patient data?
That's a really good question. So he's basically offloading all the problems onto this change data thing. So he's like, so how does change data, what made them so vulnerable to this hacking? If you're going to blame it on the change data and now that you have to update them, how did they store? Mr. Grassley's actually coming through with some good questions here. What is this data?
Data ever sent overseas?
So Change Healthcare stores data both on premises in data centers and also to a limited extent in the cloud. As we've rebuilt the technology environment, we have moved much more into the cloud, which we believe creates a much more secure future environment.
According to the FBI, there were 249 ransomware attacks against the healthcare industry in 2023. Has UnitedHealthcare Group experienced another cyber attack since February 21?
I'd have to come back to you on that. We are under attack consistently. I'd like to make sure I'm accurate in how I respond to that question, and I'll be happy to come back to you with that.
In writing, okay. Do you feel like your company is prepared?
Get back to me in writing and don't email it. Might be hacked. Just send it old school. Send it snail mail. How about that? Why don't you type me up a letter on a typewriter, old-fashioned typewriter? You handwrite it. Let's avoid all this technology stuff.
Prepared for another cyber attack? And this will be my last question.
Senator, thank you for that question. We are doing everything we can to be as prepared as possible, but we recognize the pressure of the attacks that come in. I believe that we are taking every sensible precaution, and we've brought in multiple third-party expert organizations to supplement our own teams. Where I hope we can also look for is ways in which we can start to reduce the attack pressure on the systems that we're all trying to manage.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Senator Cassidy's next.
Mr. Woody, thanks for being here. And thanks for the conversation you and I've had prior to this. First, let me acknowledge, I'm a doc, as I spoke to doctors back home, the kind of worst case is passed, and many have said that it's resolved. So let me credit you for the hard work you've done. That does kind of present a different set of questions, please. One, you mentioned that United is waiving prior authorization, essentially, but Change handles lots of claims for other insurers. And as we know, sometimes prior auth is denied retroactively. So surgery will be approved, and then at a later point, it's unapproved, and the dollars are clawed back. Some of the docs say we don't know whether the shoe will drop in the future, whether it's a Cigna that will have a problem with the prior auth process, et cetera. To what degree has United worked with other insurers to address the uncertainty regarding prior authorization? And to what degree would United hold harmless the doc who is penalized, if you will, because of the damage done to the prior auth system through this from another insurer?
Senator Cassidy, thank you very much for the question, and I very much appreciated the time you've spared to talk through some of these issues with me, and I actually followed up after our last conversations on some of these. From a UnitedHealthcare perspective, I'd like to confirm that when somebody applies for a prior authorization and it's granted, we never go back to contradict it. We never go back in time to change it if they've already acquired that. To your broader point, we are very, very supportive of efforts to modernize and enhance prior authorization in ways that can be much less burdensome on the system and much more effective in terms of ensuring patients get access to safe.
Yes, but as regards the other insurers in this particular process, if Change was an intermediary with Cigna, I keep using them because they come to mind, and there was an issue of prior auth, how will that be handled?
So in that situation, that would be a Cigna responsibility.
So has United reached out to Cigna to try and kind of, smooth it over kind of in this period in which changes the...
All right. I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I mean, we can come back to this. This is just a little unusual for me. to get into this, but this goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It's very technical. I think I'm losing some of you, but it's just kind of an interesting little part of the Luigi Mangione history. There was interesting thing that everyone at 500 Pearl Street, which is where the Larry Ray trial was. There's also one other case where I was at 500 Pearl. I can't think of it right now, but it's one of our courthouses in Manhattan where Luigi Mangione was coming in for his arraignment. Everybody was waiting outside to film him coming in, and they got him exiting on the pier on the helicopter. So, we saw that footage earlier. Here, let me just play it again.
It's hard to believe it's only been a little bit more than a week, but here we are.
So here's the helicopter footage of him coming out from the helicopter, but they got no footage of him coming in to 500 Pearl Street. I don't know if they took him around the back. They had police and dogs in the front, and they took him a back way, and caught the press off guard instead of coming in the front. But I thought it was pretty interesting that they were waiting around for the UP press was waiting around for him for like an hour in front of 500 Pearl, and it looks like they never got the shot. So this is the shot we're going to see of him coming in for his arraignment, just from the helicopter, not into court, which is the footage you think you would see. So I'm going to be following it, depending on when the trial is and what I'm doing. I don't know. I might go to some of it or all of it. I don't know. We haven't had I haven't been in court in a long time. I'd like to get back to court for one case. I think it would be interesting. Again, another federal case. Be very interested to see how the federal prosecutors are doing under Bragg. We have a mayor who's not under investigation. He has fraud charges against him. And Alvin Bragg is another Open Society Foundation funded prosecutor. One of the last ones still no, not one of the, there's still a few of them standing, and very unpopular here in Manhattan. And I just remember from Maxwell's federal prosecution that the federal prosecutors were absolutely demoralized up against a multi-million-dollar defense team. I would think that we're going to see the same here. I would think that he's going to put on a multi-million-dollar defense. Looks like his family is going to support him through this. They're very rich and do have some political power. So I'm curious what kind of team he's going to put together. I think they will be no match for just the facts of the case. I don't think it reminds me of John Lewin, DA John Lewin in Los Angeles, who's a friend of the show, has done so many episodes with him. King of the cold cases. He said he's the winningest prosecutor in his county, was reported. And he says, you know why I win cases? Because the people I prosecute are guilty. So, I mean, I think the facts of the case are so strong against him. I don't think it's going to matter who's prosecuting him, but we'll see what they'll come up with. I'll be very surprised. I would just be very curious to see how they're going to go about it. If they're going to say you got the wrong guy. And if they do, I would think they're going to go with the height. They have to do the height junk science. They got to do something like that. Or are they going to say, yes, he did it, but here's why? Which is always a losing defense. We'll see. All right, have a great night. I'm off tomorrow, but I'll be back Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody.